Before we get started, hit the comments and tell me where you're watching from and what time it is over there. Whether you're catching sunrise in Nairobi, burning midnight in New York, afternoon in Canada, or evening in France, I want to hear from you. Don't just watch silently, let me know where in the world you are. Now let's dive into the story. The gravel yard smelled of hot metal and dust when they closed in on her. 27 Marines. Full gear. Boots scraping the concrete in a tightening circle. Their shadows crawled up her body like a trap snapping shut. Someone laughed, sharp, cruel, too loud for the open base. Her wrists were free, but her rifle had been kicked away, lying just out of reach. Blood ran from a cut above her eyebrow, warm, slow, blurring her left eye. She tasted iron. The humiliation burned worse than the pain. Being surrounded wasn't the worst part. It was the certainty on their faces. They believed this was already over. She lifted her chin anyway, shoulders squared, breathing steady, even as her pulse thundered in her ears. "I warned you," she said quietly, her voice almost lost under the wind rolling in from the desert flats. The insignia on their chests caught the sun, bright, proud, unforgiving. Someone spat near her boots. Another Marine cracked his knuckles, eager, careless. They didn't see the way her stance shifted, just a fraction. Didn't recognize the calm. The kind that only comes from surviving things that were supposed to kill you. "I am a master in Marine combat." That finally earned a reaction. A ripple of mockery. A few raised brows. No one stepped back. Why would they? She was alone. Smaller. Female. Bleeding. To them this was discipline. A lesson. A show. 2 seconds was all they planned to give her. The first second vanished in a blur of motion. She moved before the signal, before the order, before their minds caught up. Her elbow smashed into a throat at the exact moment her heel crushed a knee. Bone popped. Air left lungs in a wet gasp. A body dropped. Shock cracked through the circle like glass. Someone reached for her shoulder, too slow. She twisted, using his momentum, slamming his helmet into the jaw of the Marine behind him. Teeth flew. Screams followed. The sound changed everything. Training yard noise turned into panic noise. Orders overlapped. Confusion spread. In the dust and heat, she was no longer surrounded. She was moving through them. Precise. Controlled. Furious. Every strike had a purpose. Every step stole space, stole confidence, stole time. By the second, the laughter was gone. Boots scrambled backward. One Marine hesitated, and hesitation was fatal. She disarmed him, used his own rifle to pin him to the ground, barrel pressed hard against his throat without pulling the trigger. She wasn't here to kill. She was here to end this. The yard felt smaller now, tighter, like the walls were closing in on everyone else. Sirens began to wail somewhere beyond the hangars. Late. Too late. She stood at the center of the broken circle, chest rising and falling, blood dripping onto the dust like punctuation marks. 27 had surrounded her. Not all of them were standing anymore. And as the commanding officers came running, shouting her name in disbelief, one truth hung heavy in the air. This moment had been coming for a long time. 3 years earlier, the desert had looked kinder. Still brutal, still endless, but quieter. Private Avellini Cross remembered that silence as she ran alone before dawn, boots crunching on sand stiff with cold. The sky had been bruised purple, the sun just a thin promise on the horizon. That was before the whispers started. Before the looks. Before her name became a joke passed between lockers and mess tables. Back then she was just another recruit at Fort Calder Ridge, trying to disappear into the ranks and earn her place the hard way. She kept her head down, her mouth shut, and her pace relentless. Pain was simple. Pain followed rules. People did not. The first scar hadn't come from combat. It came from trust. During her second week, her assigned fire team leader, Sergeant Malvec, had smiled too easily and spoken too softly. He told her she had potential. Said she reminded him of someone who didn't quit. When equipment went missing during a night drill, his tone changed. His report named her. No proof. Just his word against hers. The punishment was swift. Extra drills. Public correction. The kind meant to break posture and spirit. She stood in the yard while others watched, pretending not to see. Shame crawled up her spine like ants. That was the moment she learned something important. In this place, truth didn't always matter. Perception did. She trained harder after that. Earlier mornings. Later nights. When others slept, she studied manuals under a red flashlight. When they joked, she stretched until her muscles shook. Her body adapted. Her mind sharpened. Still the label stuck. Problem recruit. Too quiet. Trying too hard. It followed her like a shadow. The isolation cut deeper than the drills. Letters from home went unanswered. There was no one left there who understood why she stayed. She told herself it didn't matter. She told herself strength was enough. But some nights, lying on her bunk, staring at the underside of the bed above, she wondered how long a person could be underestimated before something inside them snapped. The turning point came during a routine hand-to-hand evaluation. The instructor that day wasn't from Calder Ridge. Master Gunnery Sergeant Ivo Rennick had been flown in quietly, his reputation trailing him like a warning. Old school. Unforgiving. He watched without comment as recruits sparred. When Avellini's turn came, her opponent smirked. Bigger. Louder. Confident. He rushed her. She didn't rush back. She waited. One step. One breath. Then she moved. Clean. Efficient. No wasted motion. Rennick's eyes narrowed. When the match ended, with her opponent flat on his back staring at the sky, there was no applause. Just silence. Rennick stepped closer, studying her like a puzzle. Where did you learn to fight like that? He asked. Avellini hesitated. Then told the truth. About growing up moving from place to place. About a mother who trained her not to win but to survive. About learning early that being smaller meant being smarter. Rennick nodded once. That was all. But that night, a note appeared on her bunk. No signature. Just coordinates. The time. She almost didn't go. Almost convinced herself it was another trap. But something in her, scarred, stubborn, tired of being small, refused to stay still. The coordinates led to an abandoned training hall, lights low, dust thick in the air. Rennick waited there alone. If you walk away now, he said, no one will blame you. Avellini didn't move. He smiled, not kindly but with approval. Good. Because what I'm about to teach you, he continued, will make enemies. It will isolate you. And one day it will save your life. He paused, then added, maybe today isn't the day they surround you. But it's coming. Avellini swallowed, fists clenched at her sides. Somewhere deep inside, a quiet resolve hardened into steel. The first scar had taught her who not to trust. What came next would teach her how to endure. The abandoned training hall became her second life. By day, Avellini cross-marched, saluted, and obeyed like everyone else. By night, she slipped through shadows, heart steady, boots silent, following the lessons that would never appear in any manual. Master Gunnery Sergeant Ivo Rennick did not teach like other instructors. There were no speeches. No encouragement. Only repetition, pain, and correction. The lights stayed low on purpose. Real fights don't happen under perfect conditions, he told her once, his voice flat as concrete. Sweat soaked her uniform. Her hands shook. Still she listened. Rennick taught her how Marines should fight, and how they actually do when fear enters the room. He stripped techniques down to their bones. Balance, angles, timing. He taught her to read shoulders before fists, breath before movement, hesitation before mistakes. When she fell, he didn't help her up. He waited, watched, forced her to decide whether she would rise on her own. Sometimes she lay there longer than she wanted, lungs burning, muscles screaming, dust sticking to the blood on her palms. Each time she stood again, something inside her hardened. Not anger. Control. Outside that hall, the base felt colder. Word spread fast, even without proof. People noticed her disappearing at night. They noticed her strength changing. Her silence deepening. Envy crept in quietly. So did resentment. Sergeant Malvec watched her closely now, his earlier confidence curdling into suspicion. During drills, he pushed her harder than anyone else. Paired her against heavier recruits. Smiled when she stumbled. Frowned when she didn't. She could feel eyes on her back in the mess hall, hear conversations pause when she sat down. Being unseen had been lonely. Being noticed was dangerous. One evening, during a live-fire exercise gone wrong, everything shifted. A faulty signal sent two squads crossing paths in low visibility. Shouting erupted. Someone panicked. A weapon discharged too close. Chaos followed. In the confusion, a younger Marine froze, rifle shaking, eyes wide with terror as orders crashed over him from every direction. Avellini didn't think. She moved. She grabbed his shoulder, grounded him, spoke low and sharp in his ear. One sentence. Clear. Simple. He obeyed. The moment passed. No one was hurt. Later, the report credited team adjustment. No names. No praise. But the Marine found her that night, hands still trembling, eyes wet. You saved me, he whispered. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. For the first time, she understood the weight of what Rennick was giving her. Rennick pushed harder after that. He began to test her restraint. put her in unfair situations, ganged up on her, provoked her, insulted her. Power without control is just noise, he snapped when she lost her temper once, striking too fast, too wild. He stopped the session cold. Made her start over from the beginning. That lesson burned more than any bruise. She learned to breathe through rage. To let it fuel precision instead of recklessness. To wait for the exact moment. 2 seconds could change everything, but only if you used them wisely. Then came the warning. Not from Rennick. From someone she didn't expect. Corporal Hayes, usually loud, usually cruel, pulled her aside after drills. His voice dropped. "They're watching you," he said. "Malvec especially. You make him look weak. Guys like that don't forget." Avellini nodded, unsurprised. She had felt the pressure building. The tightening circle. "Just be careful," Hayes added, conflicted. That word echoed in her head long after he left. Careful wasn't always an option. The night before Rennick was scheduled to leave the base, he handed her something small and worn, a faded Marine combat coin, edges smooth from years of use. "You're ready," he said. "Not to win. To endure." She asked him what to do when they finally came for her. Rennick met her gaze without blinking. "Remember who you are when they forget," he said. Then he was gone. Weeks later, under a burning sun and a crueler crowd, 27 Marines would surround her. And Avellini Cross would remember every lesson learned in the dark. The order came wrapped in routine. Avellini Cross barely noticed it at first, just another assignment posted on the board outside the command office. * corrective readiness drill. Attendance mandatory. * no explanation. No names attached. But something about the timing made her pause. The air on base felt tight that morning, like a held breath. Conversation stopped when she walked past. A few Marines avoided her eyes. Others watched too closely. The desert wind carried dust across the yard in thin, restless sheets, stinging her skin like a warning. She reported as ordered, gear inspected, posture perfect. The yard was empty except for a wide gravel square marked with faded lines from older exercises. No medics. No observers. That was the first red flag. The second came when she realized how many were arriving, and how they positioned themselves without being told. One by one. 27 in total. Not a squad. Not a platoon. A message. Sergeant Malvec stood near the edge, arms crossed, satisfaction barely hidden behind his neutral expression. No formal briefing. No whistle. Just silence stretching too long. Avellini scanned faces, catalogued stances, noted who looked nervous and who looked eager. She recognized some. Others she didn't. That mattered. It meant this wasn't about discipline. It was about dominance. Malvec's voice finally cut through the air. "You've been a problem," he said loud enough for everyone to hear. "Undermining cohesion. Acting like you're better than the rest." A murmur rippled through the circle. Avellini said nothing. Her calm unsettled them more than any protest would have. Malvec's smile thinned. "Today we fixed that." They moved closer. Slow. Deliberate. Boots crunching. The circle tightened. Her rifle was knocked aside by accident. No one stopped it. Her hands curled, then relaxed. She remembered Rennick's voice. "Power without control is just noise." She breathed in. Thus, sweat. The smell of metal. She breathed out. 2 seconds could change everything, but not yet. Not until it was undeniable. Not until witnesses could no longer pretend this was training. Inside, her heart hammered. Not with fear. With clarity. She thought of every night in the dark hall. Every bruise earned alone. Every time she had been blamed, overlooked, underestimated. She thought of the Marine she had steadied during the live-fire chaos. Of the coin in her pocket, warm from her body heat. Of the warning Rennick had given her. "They will surround you." The memory settled her. This wasn't a trap meant to break her. It was one meant to expose them. Malvec raised his hand, hesitated, then dropped it. That was the signal. Laughter broke out first. Sure. Dismissive. Someone shoved her shoulder. Another spat near her boots. Humiliation was part of the plan. Make her small. Make her react. Avellini lifted her head slowly, meeting Malvec's eyes across the circle. Her voice, when it came, was steady. "I warned you," she said. The laughter grew louder. Mocking. Someone echoed her words in a fake, high tone. She didn't flinch. "I am a master in Marine combat." That was when the energy shifted. Just slightly. A few Marines glanced at each other, uncertain. Malvec scoffed, but his jaw tightened. "You've got 2 seconds," he said. "Then this ends." He believed it. They all did. The circle closed the last inch. The sun beat down merciless. Time slowed. Avellini felt the ground beneath her boots, solid and familiar. She adjusted her stance just enough. Her muscles coiled, calm and ready. 2 seconds wasn't a threat. It was an invitation. The first blow never landed where they expected. Avellini moved into it, not away, closing distance, stealing leverage. The Marine's shoulder checked empty air as her forearm snapped up, a clean wedge under his jaw. He dropped without drama, lights out before the dust settled. The circle jolted. Someone shouted her name. Someone else cursed. Momentum shifted like a snapped cable. She didn't chase. She flowed. Each step cut an angle. Each strike solved a problem. Elbow to sternum. Heel to ankle. Palm to ear. Short, brutal answers to loud mistakes. She wasn't angry. Anger wasted time. She was precise. A rifle swung toward her ribs. She slid inside the arc, trapped the barrel with her hip and levered it down. The Marine holding it panicked. His mistake. And she used his weight to throw him into the next man, bodies tangling, boots skidding. The sound changed again. Training yard noise collapsed into fear noise. Orders fractured. Someone yelled, "Hold." Another yelled, "Get her." They collided. She kept breathing. In through the nose. Out through the mouth. Rennick's rhythm. 2 seconds at a time. Malvek barked commands from the edge, voice cracking. He tried to reassert shape. Left flank, right flank, but the shape was gone. Avellini had broken it. She slipped past a grab, felt fingers scrape fabric instead of bone, and punished the reach with a knee that folded a body inward. A helmet smashed into gravel. A groan followed. She spun, back to back with no one now, space opening where pressure had been. She took it. Claimed it. The circle became a mess of lines crossing and breaking. Then came the pause, the dangerous part. A few Marines hesitated, shock draining bravado. One raised his hands without thinking. Another stepped back, eyes wide. Avellini saw it all and made a choice. She could keep breaking them. She could end this with fear alone. Or she could end it with control. She stopped moving. Just stopped. Hands open. Chest rising. Blood dripped from her brow and darkened the dust between her boots. Silence crept in, uneven and stunned. "That's enough," she said, not loud. Clear. The words cut sharper than any strike. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then a Marine rushed anyway, rage drowning sense. Avellini met him halfway, redirected, pinned him to the ground with his own momentum, forearm across his throat without crushing it. She looked up at the rest. "I don't want to hurt you," she said. "I want this to stop." The truth of it landed. Harder than violence. Sirens wailed closer now. Doors slammed in the distance. Officers running. Malvek's face drained of color. He stepped forward too late, shouting about insubordination, about consequences. Avellini rose slowly, releasing the pinned Marine and backing away, palms still open. She stood alone in the broken yard, surrounded by bodies sitting, kneeling, or staring at the ground. No one laughed anymore. No one spat. The desert wind lifted dust into the sunlight, turning it gold. When the commanding officers arrived, the scene spoke before anyone could. No clean formation. No medical plan. No observers. 27 Marines with bruises, scrapes, and shaken eyes. One woman standing calm at the center. The questions came fast. Voices overlapped. Avellini answered only what was asked. Nothing more. She didn't accuse. She didn't beg. She let the facts breathe. As medics moved in and the yard emptied, a young lieutenant paused near her. "You could have gone further," he said quietly. Avellini looked at the scuffed ground, then back up. "Yes, sir," she replied. "I chose not to." The lieutenant studied her for a long moment, then nodded once. Somewhere deep inside her chest, something unclenched. The circle had broken. But the cost, and the truth were still coming. The base was quieter after that day, but quieter in a dangerous way. Whispers trailed her through corridors, down metal stairwells, across the mess hall. She could hear them when she passed, low voices stopping mid-sentence, chairs scraping under sudden movement. Some were admiration, some fear, most pure resentment. Sergeant Malvek avoided eye contact, but the anger in his jawline didn't hide. Others stared too long. Avellini had won the fight but not the war. The battle for respect, or revenge, had just begun. That night, she walked alone to the outskirts of the training yard. Dust clung to her boots, the smell of sweat and iron heavy in the air. Her reflection in a darkened window showed a face streaked with blood and dirt, bruised but calm. Every scar told a story of survival, of lessons learned in the dark hall with Rennick. She touched the coin in her pocket, worn smooth, warm from her body. 2 seconds, she thought. 2 seconds to change everything, and now she understood how fragile time could be. She wasn't the only one watching. From a shadow near the command post, a pair of eyes followed her steps. Corporal Hayes, conflicted before, lingered behind a pillar, keeping distance. He had seen the circle break, the precision, the restraint. He had also felt the tension of someone who didn't forgive easily, someone who calculated every movement. His hands twitched, remembering the night Avellini had steadied him during live-fire exercises. "She's unstoppable," he whispered mostly to himself. But the base was unforgiving. Unstoppable women were targets, whether they realized it or not. The next days passed in a blur of inspections, whispers, and cautious glances. Avellini trained harder, but now every exercise carried an edge. Every Marine's reaction was a variable. She noticed patterns, alliances forming, eyes darting in silent communication. Malvec tried to assert authority with drills and small provocations, testing limits she had already mastered. He underestimated one thing: her mind, sharper than her fists, watching, cataloging. Every small slight was a thread she noted. Every whispered threat, a map. She was alone in the yard, yes, but never in the fight. Then came the first direct challenge. During a tactical maneuver, one of the Marines tried to isolate her, push her into a corner. The attempt was clumsy, overconfident. Avellini stepped into the moment. Not with rage, but with grace. A sweep, a pivot, a controlled takedown that left the Marine on the ground, stunned and silent. Not humiliated, just aware. Fear was a weapon she did not wield lightly. It worked better when it was earned quietly, subtly, like a shadow following every step. By the end of the week, the circle of attention had grown. Some were curious, some wary, most resentful. She walked through the halls like a quiet storm, calm on the surface, aware of the ripples below. And late at night, when the base slept, she returned to her usual spot at the far edge of the training yard, thinking about the next step. The fight wasn't over. The tension wasn't just between her and the Marines. It was between who she had been, who she was, and who she could become. Every whisper, every glance, every shadowed eye was a piece of the puzzle she intended to solve. Somewhere deep down, Avellini smiled faintly. For the first time, she understood that mastery wasn't about defeating one circle of enemies. It was about surviving, anticipating, and reshaping the game before anyone else even knew it existed. The war wasn't loud. It was quiet, patient, and deadly. And she had all the time she needed. By midweek, tension had reached a boiling point. The base felt smaller now, claustrophobic, every hallway echoing with the unspoken question. Who is Avellini Cross really? She moved with purpose, boots striking the floor like metronomes of calm fury. Every glance she caught, every smirk she ignored, was a mental calculation. 2 seconds could still decide life or death, trust or betrayal, but she no longer waited. She created the moment herself. Malvec was restless. He orchestrated minor provocations, pushed recruits to her side during drills, whispered sharp comments meant to undermine her. Avellini let most pass. Observation was part of strategy. But when he tried to publicly humiliate her during an obstacle course, she acted. Not with blind violence but precision. A swift step, a calculated redirection, left him off balance, tripping on a log. The yard fell silent. Not from fear alone. From disbelief. The Marine who had mocked her 2 days ago whispered, "She's different." Others exchanged glances. Doubt began to creep into confidence. The whispers turned into lines forming in the sand. Allies emerged quietly. Hayes, the conflicted corporal, offered small nods, subtle warnings. Others stayed hidden, too afraid to act, too proud to admit respect. Avellini accepted neither praise nor animosity. She trained harder, practicing hand-to-hand drills and rifle tactics simultaneously, imagining 27 Marines converging again, but this time she would dictate the outcome. Each night, she replayed scenarios, rewrote them, calculated moves not yet made. Then came the night that changed everything. A sudden alarm, a drill that shouldn't have been announced. Flashing lights cut across the yard. Figures ran from the barracks. The circle, yes, the same 27, formed again, intentional this time, coordinated. Malvec at the edge, authority blazing, voice commanding compliance. The air vibrated with anticipation. This was no longer training. This was a test. Avellini knew it. She had been ready, but the weight of expectation, the danger of misstep, and the lingering ghosts of humiliation made the moment sharp, visceral. She breathed. 2 seconds. 1. No hesitation. Every muscle poised, mind focused. They charged. Not as one but in fragmented lines, eager to crush her before she struck. She moved like water, a force controlled, precise, devastatingly efficient. Elbow, knee, palm strike, each contact teaching a lesson in restraint and command. The circle wavered. Lines broke. Some fell, some froze. Malvek shouted again, the authority in his voice cracking under tension. And yet she was calm, serene in the eye of the storm. The aftermath was quiet, echoing with realization. The yard littered with the consequences of miscalculated aggression, but no one seriously injured, her control absolute. The respect she had earned through action began to ripple outward. Allies and enemies alike watched the transformation of a Marine who refused to be underestimated, a woman who could survive and lead when the system itself tried to break her. And in the stillness, Avellini understood a fundamental truth. Mastery was not about domination. It was about shaping the battlefield before it even existed, and commanding it with quiet certainty. The days after the second confrontation were charged with an unspoken tension that crawled into every corner of the base. Conversations paused when she entered rooms. Orders carried a new weight. The Marines who had once mocked her now glanced sideways, calculating, hesitant. Even Sergeant Malvek's jaw remained tight, eyes sharp with barely contained fury. But it wasn't fear alone that rippled through the ranks. It was respect, quiet, grudging, undeniable. Avellini Cross had rewritten the rules. And she knew the next challenge wouldn't be physical. It would be inside her own mind. Each night, when the base lights dimmed and the desert wind whispered against the barracks, she trained alone. Shadow drills. Hand-to-hand combinations. Tactical maneuvers rehearsed silently in her mind. But the real battle was in memory, the faces of those who had tried to break her, the whispers, the laughter, the isolation. Rage bubbled beneath the surface, a storm she could not allow to consume her. 2 seconds, she reminded herself. 2 seconds to choose clarity over chaos. Control over anger. Precision over impulse. Then came the test no one could see. An unexpected drill, the base cut off from command, emergency protocol enacted. 27 Marines had to navigate a simulated hostile engagement with her. Not as enemies now, but as participants in a scenario designed to evaluate readiness and command. Some remembered humiliation. Others remembered defeat. Each carried tension like a live wire, and she moved through it all with quiet authority. Every order, every adjustment, every pause shaped the outcome. She was no longer fighting them. She was orchestrating survival. During the exercise, a young recruit stumbled, a grenade prop replica falling dangerously close. Reflexive instinct surged. Avellini was there in one heartbeat, sweeping the recruit out of harm's way, her hands steady, her eyes unblinking. Relief mixed with awe in the faces around her. Even Malvek's glare softened momentarily. But she didn't celebrate. Control demanded calm. Emotions, however righteous, were not tools, they were hazards. When the drill ended, silence followed. The commanding officer, who had been observing from a distance, approached. "Impressive," he said, voice low. "You've not only survived, you've led." Avellini nodded, acknowledging the words without pride. Leadership, she knew, was earned in motion, not declared in speech. Around her the circle had shifted, not erased but altered. Allies appeared quietly, offering nods, subtle signs of recognition. Resentment remained, but it was tempered by realization. She had mastered not just combat but presence, the unspoken influence that shapes outcomes before they occur. That night, as she lay on the hard cot in the barracks, the storm within her finally calmed. The rage, the fear, the humiliation, all channeled into discipline, strategy, control. Every scar, every lesson, every 2-second moment of danger had led her here. She closed her eyes, feeling the weight of survival and mastery settle into her bones. And in the darkness, a quiet promise formed. Whatever came next, she would face it fully without hesitation. The storm was hers to command. The sun had barely risen, casting long shadows over the gravel yard, when the alarm sounded. This time it wasn't a drill. The base perimeter had been breached. 27 Marines, trained, armed, and loyal to protocol, moved with lethal precision, but hesitation lingered. They had faced her before, tested her strength, and some had begun to doubt themselves. Malvek led them, voice sharp, boots pounding, but the hesitation in their eyes betrayed their fear. Avellini Cross, standing alone, felt the familiar calm descend. This was the moment she had prepared for, the ultimate test of everything she had learned. She stepped forward, boots crunching on the dust, her eyes scanning, calculating. Every man and woman in the circle had a weakness she had catalogued. One leaned on aggression, another on hesitation, a third on mimicry of others. She used their strengths against them, turning momentum and expectation into her advantage. They surged forward, converging on her, but she moved like a shadow, slipping through the cracks in their formation, redirecting force with elbows, knees and precise grabs. Not one wasted motion. Not one strike without purpose. The first Marine charged, confident, teeth gritted. Avellini sidestepped, guiding him forward into the path of another. The collision was brutal yet controlled. No one died, but the impact shattered their rhythm. Malbec barked orders, fury mixing with disbelief, and the circle tightened again. This time she didn't wait. Every move was premeditated, every breath measured. She pivoted, spun, and took control of the yard with the kind of grace that made the chaos look choreographed. The Marines faltered. Confusion spread. Fear mingled with awe. Then came the critical moment. Malbec himself lunged, furious and determined to end this. Avellini met him mid-step, catching his momentum, twisting, redirecting, pinning him without harm. He struggled, eyes wide, jaw tight, realizing too late that his authority could not outmatch precision and preparation. Around them the circle collapsed. Marines either froze or stumbled backward. The storm had broken, the tension dissipated. Control was hers. She stepped back, chest rising and falling steadily. Silence followed, heavy, reverent, and unbroken. Her gaze swept over every face in the yard. No one laughed. No one mocked. Respect, grudging but real, lingered in the air. Malbec, kneeling, met her eyes. He did not speak. He could not. His anger, humiliation, and pride were swallowed by understanding. She had survived. She had commanded. She had rewritten the rules without spilling unnecessary blood. The commanding officers arrived moments later, rushing across the yard. Their reports of a perimeter breach and a disruption in discipline collided with the scene before them. Avellini stood alone, composed, blood and dust streaked across her face, eyes clear and unyielding. Every officer, Marine and recruit knew that the outcome was a testament not to brute force, but to mastery, the mastery of body, mind and presence. Later, as she cleaned her wounds in the dim light of the barracks, she reflected on everything that had led her here. The whispered doubts, the betrayals, the night drills with Rennick, the 2-second moments that had defined life and death. She allowed herself a faint smile. She had not only survived the circle. She had transformed it. The storm within had become a force the world had to recognize. And tomorrow she would walk the yard again, not just as a Marine, but as someone who had earned her place through fire, calculation, and indomitable will. The base was quiet the morning after the breach, but quiet carried weight. The Marines who had surrounded Avellini Cross moved differently now, heads held higher, steps measured, their eyes respectful, wary, even deferential. Even Sergeant Malbec avoided direct confrontation, acknowledging her presence with a subtle nod rather than challenge. The circle that once sought to break her had been dismantled, not with rage but with precision, control, and foresight. Avellini walked across the training yard, the gravel crunching beneath her boots like a heartbeat. She carried no weapon in her hands, but the discipline in her posture spoke louder than rifles or combat knives. Recruits and seasoned Marines alike watched her pass. Some remembered the humiliation they had tried to inflict. Some remembered the strikes she had delivered, controlled yet devastating. All recognized the truth: she had become more than a survivor. She was a master of the battlefield, yes, but also of perception, patience, and leadership. Later, in the officers' quarters, she received formal acknowledgement. The commanding officer, a stern woman with sharp eyes and decades of experience, shook her hand. "You've not only proven your skill," she said, "but also your judgment. Leadership isn't about fear. It's about knowing the moment to act, and the moment to restrain." Avellini nodded. The words resonated, but she knew mastery wasn't bestowed. It was earned in dust, in sweat, in those 2-second moments that decide the outcome of every challenge. By afternoon, the atmosphere on base had shifted completely. Marines moved with purpose but also with caution, aware that Avellini's presence demanded precision, focus, and respect. Some approached her quietly, seeking guidance. Others simply gave space, knowing the storm she carried had transformed into quiet authority. She accepted both without judgment. She had learned that power without wisdom was dangerous, and that control over oneself was more potent than any weapon. That evening, as the sun dipped below the desert horizon, Avellini stood alone on the edge of the training yard. Dust swirled around her boots. The air was warm, scented with sand and faint smoke from distant drills. She touched the worn Marine coin in her pocket, the one Rennick had given her years ago. Every lesson, every scar, every whispered warning had led to this moment. She exhaled slowly, letting the tension melt, feeling the calm strength she had earned settle into her bones. She thought of the 27 Marines who had once encircled her, of Sergeant Malvec's fury, of whispered doubts, and of the fear she had transformed into respect. She smiled faintly. This was not the end of challenges. Life rarely offers such clarity, but she had proven to herself that she could meet any circle, any threat, any storm and emerge intact, unbroken, and in command. Mastery was no longer a promise. It was reality. The desert wind picked up, lifting dust into the golden light of sunset. Avellini walked forward, leaving footprints behind her, a trail of resilience, precision, and silent authority. The base would remember this day, not as a fight, not as humiliation, but as the emergence of a Marine who had turned fear into strategy, pain into strength, and 2 seconds into mastery. And in that quiet triumph she understood something simple yet profound. Some battles are not won with force. They are won with patience, wisdom, and the courage to stand when the world expects you to fall.